Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Why do you spend your money the way you do? Figuring that out may be a good way to get control of your finances. Learn more about the psychology of spending and join the conversation. Dialogue is next. Hello, I'm Joan Cartan Hansen. Thank you for joining us here on Idaho Public Television, on the World Wide Web, and on public radio stations. If you're like most Americans, you have some debt. And if you're like most Americans, you don't like it. But you can't get control of your finances if you don't understand how and why you spend your money the way you do. All of us have spending triggers, and my guest advises people on how to recognize those spending red flags. Todd Christensen is the educational director for the National Financial Education Center. I'll get that out. It's a long title. Thank you, Todd.
Close, yeah.
Anyway, you're going to tell us more about the psychology of spending. Todd, I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And we want you to be part of the conversation. Give us a call, toll free at 1-800-973-9800. So why is it important to figure out how we spend or why we spend the way we spend?
As you said, spending is really vital to what we want to accomplish with our finances. A lot of people say, well, we want to get out of debt. They might actually create a budget, how they're going to get there. And it could be the best budget in the world, beautiful budget, but if it's not tied to spending behaviors that are going to help us achieve those goals that are tied to that budget, then it really becomes just an exercise in frustration sometimes.
Well, I would argue budgets to me can be sometimes an
Makes
exercise.
everybody's hair on the back of their head raised a bit.
So is this just about impulse spending? I buy this just because?
No, actually impulse spending is, and we can talk about that a little more in detail, but it's a variety of types of spending. Impulse can be in a variety of categories. But we're talking about the personalities, why we spend, what our values are, and what's important to us, and sometimes what's not important to us and how we spend on those.
Well, you have kind of defined this in 6 circles of spending, you call it. So let's walk through those.
Assigned a color to each one.
So let's walk through those 6 circles of spelling. Those 6 circles of spending. First is the approval.
Okay, we've got the approval spending.
And what kind of spending is that?
Approval spending is spending money to kind of fit in, to get somebody's favor, to increase, maybe to get something out of a relationship or out of a group, social setting. Okay. So we're spending, might be on us, but it might be on, it's probably on others, but it's kind of with something, expecting something in return.
Okay, and then achievement spending.
Achievement spending, that's when we spend money on ourselves because we value perhaps learning. We want to learn more. We like to increase our knowledge or skills or our abilities, and so we might buy books or get a degree or go to class.
Admiration spending is the next circle.
Admiration spending. It might seem sometimes like it's related to the achievement spending, but we spend money on things that will get other people's admiration, of course. Right. It's about image. It's not necessarily trying to get them to approve of us. It's do they think that we're pretty cool or that we're well dressed.
How about relationship spending?
Relationship spending is spending money on others without expecting something in return. It might be gift giving without that expectation that they're going to give me a gift for my birthday.
Okay, and then we've got amusement.
Amusement spending, that's you can call it adrenaline spending if you want, spending on things that we enjoy for the thrill of it.
Okay, and responsibility spending.
Responsibility spending we look at as obligations. If there's an obligation, or if we feel that it's something that we really believe in strongly, maybe idealism or something like that.
Now this is beyond just the spending for the rent and heating and phone and the basics of life. Does that include that kind of spending?
Now, responsibility spending does, because that's something that we feel, I need to spend. I'm responsible for taking care of my home, so I have to do that, or I have to spend on the utilities, and we need groceries. But all these others will encompass pretty much most of any expense that we will have in our life.
Well, we have a quiz for you, some questions. So we're going to go through this list of questions. So take a look at these questions, and as we go through it, answer which one applies to you. So assuming you had those basic expenses covered, and you were given a lump sum of money that you had to spend. So this is money you have to spend.
Keep it.
You can't keep it. You have to spend it. Would you spend it on A, a college course to improve your work skills, or B, some name brand clothes, C, on an ATV, a snowmobile, or sporting equipment, something that'll add a little thrill to life, D, a family vacation where the kids or your spouse, not you, get to decide where to go, on a gift for that person you forgot last Christmas, or a donation to a worthy cause. So think about which one of those, that A, B, C, D, E, or F, you would pick. Okay, so let's figure out. If you picked A, which is that college course to improve your work skills, that would put you into what kind of spending?
Your achievement spending. You're
Achievement
spending
spending.
on yourself because it's important to you. Lifelong learners are achievement spenders, whether it's college, whether it's a continuing education or certification program.
It doesn't sound bad.
No, it's not. And not all, these aren't all bad, and some of them have some positive, in fact, 3 of them are generally, we consider value-based, that we know why we're spending. Achievement is one of them. It's important to us that we want to learn or we want to improve our own skills, and that's might be our value, and it could be a lifelong value. So this is a very positive thing.
But it can, on the send up a red flag.
Certainly, if we're spending on that without thinking about the financial consequences, then yes, it can definitely lead to some financial trouble.
Okay, so if you picked B, some name brand clothes, you are what kind of a spender?
Likely, we're looking at an admiration spender.
And again, that's not necessarily bad.
If that's your value,
Right.
then that's fine.
Okay.
Now you have to ask yourself, am I doing it to be admired, or is it the quality that I want? Or
Yeah.
maybe you could find quality in something that's not name brand.
Okay. If you answered C, on an ATV, snowmobile, or other sporting equipment, you are an amusement spender.
Certainly, yes. And I think a lot of us at one time or another are going to be in a lot of these different colored circles. And amusement spending is common for, if it's for ourselves, that's pure amusement. If it's for family, it might be a little different.
Okay. Well, that next one is the family vacation where the kids or your spouse, not you, get to decide where to go.
And this is that idea that we're not involved in the benefits of it. I mean,
Right.
we are going to be part of the family experience, but they get to choose, and we're willing to let them do that because we want them to enjoy, make
So
sure they enjoy
you're
it.
spending to help your relationship with others, which makes this
Correct.
relationship spending.
Correct.
Okay. On a gift for that person you forgot last Christmas.
Who hasn't? Whether at Christmas time or somebody gives you a birthday gift that
That's
you forgot them, right?
Approval spending.
That is approval spending, and we can call them guilt spenders sometimes. That I have to give it because otherwise they might think that I'm a cheapskate or that I don't care. Or we spend to get their approval, to get something from them.
And the last one is a donation to a worthy cause, and that would make you
A responsibility
a
spender.
responsibility spender.
Yeah, because you believe it's either an obligation or you feel a duty. It's part of your values, maybe, that you believe in that cause and you want to see it to progress.
So what part of a relationship would be responsibility spending is bad?
Well, and this can get to a lot of these, is if we're not looking down the road, if we're not really paying attention to, can I afford this? I mean, who doesn't want to, first of all, buy those cookies from the Girl Scouts when they come by, right? And usually it won't break the bank, but can we buy something from everybody who tries to sell us something for a worthy cause? We have to set ourselves some limits.
Okay, so now that we've kind of defined where you are in those circles and realizing you sometimes move from circle to circle.
Yes, and we're not generally all of one circle or another. We can have various aspects of them, and throughout our lives we are going to change.
And there's sometimes where you're absolutely not. You know, I am not going to buy an ATV.
Right, and whether it's I'm not going to buy those sort of things. They're too risky, or I don't care about buying image sort of issues. But those they can bring their own negative consequences. If we try and put off, sometimes there's some expenses in those categories we eventually are going to need to buy, and if we don't like them so much, we'll try and put it off as long as possible. And then if it becomes a last-minute purchase, that can lead to overspending. because we're not comparison shopping, we're not thinking about, we're just going to go in, get what we need, and get out.
So that for clothes, for example, it's like, okay, I
Yeah.
have to have something. I hate
Yeah.
shopping. I'm just going to go get something.
Quite possible.
That's when
And-
you get into trouble.
Yes, if we're waiting and not thinking it through ahead of time.
So once you've kind of identified these red flags, what's the next step?
Well, one of the most important things with any of these issues is identifying your values. You need to make sure that after you figure out, okay, where am I strong in one category and where am I weak in another, does that fit your values? Is achievement important? Is relationship important? And make sure that they fit. And it doesn't mean that if you're all red, for example, when you take this sort of a quiz, that doesn't mean that that's where your money all goes. But that does mean that that's probably where you're tempted to spend money. And that's where impulse spending comes in, is that this sort of quiz helps identify the places, situations where you might be tempted to spend way more than you can afford, whether it's in, I might be sometimes tempted to spend on an amusement, but I've got to be aware of that so that I don't become an impulse spender, because impulse spending is almost always overspending.
So how do you begin to marry this with that budget that I've come up with?
You need to, after you got your values, you write them down, you write down your goals. And I'm not talking necessarily about the long-term goals. There are the retirement goals. That's great. Everybody needs those sort of things, and paying off the home or buying a home. But we're also talking about things in 3 months or 3 years that you want to achieve with your finances. That's going to take some money, and that's where we can say, okay, I want to go on a vacation with my family. How am I going to get there? And let's write it down. How much am I going to need, and so forth. So writing down goals and making sure that they really are connected to your values.
And what mistakes what are those pitfalls that most people run into when they start thinking about this?
Not writing it down, not carrying it with you. I mean, a lot of us may have written down goals, but then we forget about them. Carrying them with you is really important. To take goals, write them down, carry them with you, put them in your purse or your wallet, put them on a fridge, and look at them regularly, and so that you remind yourself, why am I focusing so much? Why do I need to work so hard on correcting what might not be a positive spending behavior?
There was a study that came out in the Journal of Psychology recently that said people will spend less money if they have to pay cash. If you give them gift certificates, if you give them credit cards with the same spending amount, they will inevitably spend less if they pay with cash.
That's right. Plastic, for some reason, and as you say, it's whether it's credit card, gift card, debit card, we spend more, and it's about 10% more than we would if we only use cash. And you put yourself in a situation like going out for dinner, where you get all the senses involved, where you've got food and you got the smells and everything looks good and you're hungry. It's even worse. You're even more likely to spend above and beyond what you would with cash.
So what advice? I mean, I can't. In this society, you can't. I don't feel comfortable walking around with even $100 in my pocket. And I usually don't have $100 in my pocket.
Yeah, and developing the discipline. Discipline in finance, it's not something that happens overnight. How do you live in a society where everybody accepts credit cards and expects you to have a credit card? And I mean, their credit cards are very convenient. They're very a lot of securities involved, where if you lose them, you're not responsible for more than $50 or less, depending on the credit card. So it's very positive to have those, but you have to be aware that it's going to lead to spending more. And so if we can just have down and maybe not go into the store unless you know what your spending limit is. Take a calculator. I mean, I've sat stood in an aisle before with a calculator and I'm sure that people walking by are thinking, what a geek. Is this a financial geek I'm walking by? But hey, if it keeps you within your budget and keeps you going towards your values, that's what you should care about. Don't care about what they're thinking.
Unless you're an admiration spender.
True. If that's your value, then you're not going to be standing in the line in the aisle with a calculator.
Well, you have 3 pieces of advice for us on spending habits. Let's go to the first one, and we'll get that. That first one is It's not what you make, it's what you keep. So tell me about that one.
We meet a variety of people with a variety of incomes in our classes and in the counseling that we do, and I've really come to believe that it's less important how much you earn, because everybody would say, I just need more money. Who wouldn't take more money if it was offered to you? But the key is, how much of that money are you actually keeping? On your payday, when you get a paycheck, who really gets paid? Usually, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's the bill collectors, it's the utility company, it's the mortgage company. And if we're not putting anything in savings, we're not getting paid. It's not until we start putting something into our savings account that we actually get paid and that we're actually keeping our money.
So it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Right.
Okay, I think, let's see, we have our first phone caller, so let's get our caller going here. Josh in Sandpoint. Josh.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you? Go ahead.
We're doing good. I'm just curious how a person's supposed to balance a budget when the average wage, at least in northern Idaho, is about $7 an hour.
That's right.
That's a challenge.
That is a challenge. Let's talk about
it. It isn't a challenge, it's an impossibility. You continue to go continually more and more into debt.
Well, and Josh, I mean, you bring up a good point that there are certain survival levels that we have to have as far as if we are not making a certain amount of income, how are we going to put food on the table? How are we going to take care of, especially if there's children involved or other dependents? To an extent, though, in this country, we also have increased our expectations of what we should have, and that's where a budget. And most people don't like the word budget, so let's call it a spending plan.
Okay.
Let's not.
Spending plan sounds better.
Yes, we have to spend money. Budgets are, people hear budget and they say, I can't spend money on a budget. Spending plan is what it might help. Just think of it that way. Where are you going to spend that money, and which of all those expenses that we have to have every month, which are the highest priority? And that's really what a budget is. Write down your goals, prioritize your expenses, make sure you're hitting the most important ones. And then if that's still not cutting it, then that's where you have to start looking at some other outside resources, family or nonprofit agencies or some sort of resources, community resources.
Living wage, I think, is what, $10? $10 an hour or something?
It certainly doesn't seem like it's enough, whatever
and
it
70
is.
is definitely not enough. So.
It never seems like it's enough. And like I say, we can always say we take more money, and there is that minimum threshold that we have to have.
Is there, with the economy in such a tough shape, a lot of people are afraid to even spend anything, even though they may have the resources to do it. How do we get over that fear of spending anything at all?
And there is that fear out there that what if I spend my money and then things get worse, or I lose my job, and I'm certainly not going to be here sit here and say be a patriot and you got to be patriotic and spend your money. I think that what can get us in trouble is saying spend for spending's sake is important. I don't think that's the way we have to do it. But we have to be realistic, and if we're going toward if we're saving for goals, that's great. And we just look at our values. What's important to us now? What's important to us in the future? Make sure that we've got a security net there for us in some sort of a savings plan or savings strategy.
It's probably heresy to say this, but can you save too much?
If you were to ask me, I would say it's hard to save too much, but you can. I mean, you don't want to be a miser. I mean, because that's savings for savings' sake. That's the same thing as spending for spending's sake. You're not using your finances to achieve your goals. You got to look at what is it that I want to achieve. Have some sort of a savings plan, whether it's a minimum of some sort of $1,000 to get you through some what might be tough times, in case you lost your job or sick, or up to 3 to 6 months worth in the long run. I mean, that's 3 to 6 months worth of expenses.
A cushion, yeah. Okay.
But can you save too much? It depends on what your goals are.
Okay. Well, our call's next. Let's go to our second piece of advice for spending, and that would be write specific financial goals and keep them with you. We talked a little bit about that earlier. I mean, do you physically mean keep a piece of paper
Yes.
in your wallet or in your purse?
Yes. And be very specific with the goals. Don't just say, I'd like to retire rich. I mean, I think that's a goal that a large percent of the population would say they would love to retire rich someday, or I'd like to own a home. Be specific. When do you want to achieve that goal? How much money do you think it's going to require? And there are calculators online. You can Google a calculator, retirement calculator, or something else that can help you figure out how much you're going to need. But I'm also saying, be specific. Figure it out. How much does that mean you have to be saving today? Because if we look at long-term goals, a lot of them are very large. You know, if you have that long-term goals, oh, I'd like to retire a millionaire. Just throwing it out there because that's the word
I'd like
that's
to
a
just be able to
benchmark,
retire.
right? Can I still retire? But if it's a huge amount of money, we can't relate that to what we're doing today, our expenses today. We can't relate that to, can I go out for dinner today? Can I afford it? Can I afford to stop and get a latte or a hot chocolate or whatever it might be? It's just $4. That's not going to keep me from reaching, my $500,000 or $1 million goal. But in the long term, it may, and that's what we don't stop and think. If I'm spending $5 a day going out, or $6 a day going out for lunch, that's $1,500, $1,700, $1,800 a year just for one meal.
Okay, let's go to David in Boise. David.
Hello. This is kind of a general psychology question, and hopefully you can answer it. It's in the state of Idaho, they wanted to raise the gasoline tax so much per gallon, maybe 15 cents or so in a few years. And everybody squawked about that, but nobody has squawked about it going up 85 cents or 80 cents since the first of the year. I was wondering, how can he explain that one, please? It's a general psychology thing, just of the whole spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I've thought about that as well, and I have to, my disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist, but I think, if I think about it, we're still kind of comparing everything right now to where we were 8-9 months ago, 7-8 months ago when gas was at $3.50, $4 a gallon. We're still thinking $2 a gallon, that's good. We could still handle that. I mean, it's still heading up, but that's how I would see it.
Well, and anything that where the perspective and the boundaries are makes a factor in, is this going to be too much or not enough, kind of that thing. Let's go to that third piece of advice, which is a very specific piece of advice, and that is sleep overnight on any single purchase. $50, that's $50 or more. Now, you're not talking about like the groceries.
No, not like I have to spend $100 on groceries. Is there a single item that you want to purchase, or that you see, especially if you're in the store and you see it on sale, or you say, oh, that looks really fun or neat. If it's probably going to be coming from that colored circle that you score very highly on. And you're going to say, oh, that sounds really neat.
Oh, it's on sale.
Yeah, if it's on sale.
Oh, man, it's on
I've
sale.
got to get it on, because it's never going to be on sale again, right? So what we say is, if it's, and we put $50. For some people it might be $25. Some other it might be $100 or more. But let's just say $50. Get yourself out of the store. Get away from the temptation. Think about it, because there's that impulse that comes and says, I got to have it now. Because if I don't get it now, what if it's gone, or what if it's not on sale tomorrow? And so if we can just get to the next aisle, I like to joke about that old movie with Bill Murray, the baby step in it. What About Bob?
Yeah.
You got a baby step to the next aisle. Make sure that you're not, just remove yourself from the temptation. Get out to the car. If you can just get yourself out to the car and say, I'll think about it out there. You'll sit down in the car, and a lot of times you'll say, that's a long way back in. I really don't need to go get it. And if you're still thinking, oh, that's still pretty cool, then go home, sleep on it overnight, and the next morning, when you've had a good night's sleep, you can think about it. Does that really fit into my values, into my goals? Then you can consider it.
Then you can maybe go back in and work on your
as long as it works within your budget.
Well,
Spending plan.
Your spending plan.
Yes.
There you go.
Sorry.
Your spending plan. So what's the first step you should take? Okay, we've done our taxes, so I have everything up to date. I have all my financial records that are sitting in front of me. I haven't quite packed them away yet.
So what to do now?
And I want to start my spending plan.
Okay.
What's the first step?
Never work on a spending plan, aka budget, without, and I hate to sound like a broken record, writing those goals down. If we work on a spending plan, we're figuring out how much do we earn, how much do we have to spend. If we don't know why we're doing that, there's nothing meaningful to us tied to that. It just becomes frustrating and boring and just an exercise in mathematics. Negative mathematics sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So write down the goals, work on your budget, look at where you want to be, put it into place, look at your spending behaviors. And if you have to, write down, where am I tempted to spend? So that when you get in those impulse situations, you can say, okay, this is one of those places where I might be an amusement spender, or I might be an admiration spender. Is that really where I want to go? So just keep in mind, be aware of what you're tempted to spend money on.
And how often should you look at that spending plan or those goals?
But I think at least monthly.
Really reevaluate those values every month. Obviously not your month to month, whether you're achieving your goals, but the bigger picture. How often should you review your goals and values?
Well, I think at least annually. If you're talking about this year, here are my goals and here are my values. At least next year, have they changed? Am I getting closer to them? Maybe an annual evaluation of your own finances. Check out how close you're getting to your goals, or if they're getting further away, and reassess: are they really that important to me, or maybe there's some other goals I should look at achieving.
Okay, when we if you have more information about this, when we do our Web Extra program for this week's dialogue, we're going to take on a new topic, and that is pain-free ways to find cash in your budget. So check us out on Facebook, on our dialogue website when you find out more about that. So I want to get one more question. What kind of a spender are you?
I could be tempted to be an amusement spender. I'm in my 40s, so midlife sort of a thing. But so I got to be aware of that.
So, okay. Well, it looks. I think I'm a responsibility or relationship spender, just to be fair.
Yep.
We both get out there. Okay. I'm afraid we have run out of time. Todd, I thank you. Appreciate you joining us. And we have lots more information for you all about what's going on, the psychology of spending. You can check it out on our website at idahoptv.org. And we're also on Facebook. So check it out search for Dialogue on Idaho Public Television and become a fan of us. You can find us also on YouTube. There's lots of ways to look us up, so take some time, check us out. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you here next time on Dialogue.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho. To order a copy of this program from Idaho Public Television, call our toll-free number or visit us on the World Wide Web